Good evening. This meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment of the Township of Union is being held pursuant to the Open Public Meeting Law, C-231 Laws of New Jersey, dated 1975. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the local Source and the Star Ledger, the two newspapers of record, and notice has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building adjacent to the municipal clerk's office. Roll call.
Mr. Bentavegana.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Wiley is absent. Miss Alexander.
Here.
Miss Martins.
Here.
Miss Scott.
Here.
Mr. McNeil.
Here.
Mr. Graves.
Here.
And Mr. Champy.
Here. There being a quorum present, this meeting is now declared open. At this time, I'll entertain for a motion for the minute meetings of January the 11th, the approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the minute meetings of January 11th be approved as written and dispense with their reading.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Mr. Manguso, are there any communications?
There are no communications, Mr. Champy.
Thank you. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I have a few announcements to make. First, Mr. James D. Giovanni, the gentleman who sat to my far right, retired effective December 31st, 2022. Jim was one of our long-term board members, having been appointed in 1998. Mr. D. Giovanni served as a board member for approximately 24 years, serving as the acting chair for many of those years. Jim brought experience and had a vast knowledge of the zoning laws of New Jersey, and being a longtime union resident and a true unionite, Jim's decisions were always based with the township's best interest in mind. At this time, the entire board would like to wish Jim well in his retirement and all his future endeavors. And thank you, Jim, for your service. My second announcement concerns some of the changes in the board. At the Township Committee reorganization meeting held on January 1st, 2023, Ms. Melody Scott was appointed as a regular board member. Mr. Bob Johnson was also appointed as a regular board member, and Mr. Richard Graves was appointed as alternate number 2. At our zoning board reorganization meeting, which was held on January the 11th, 2023, Mr. Ricardo McNeil becomes alternate number 1. Mr. Henry Wiley will be the board's new vice chairman, and Ms. Donna Alexander will be the board's new acting chairman. Congratulations to all on their appointments, and we look forward to working with you during the coming year. Continuing with our regular meeting, our first order of business is the approval of a resolution. It concerns calendar number 3402, Theodore Jenkins, located at 1495 Brown Avenue, Block 4912, Lot 2, two-family home in a one-family zone. You've all had a chance to read the resolution. Are there any board members who would like to comment or make changes or modifications to the resolution? Hearing none, may I have a motion for the approval of the resolution and a second?
Mr. Chairman, I move that this board adopt the resolution as written and as accurately memorializing the previous findings of this board.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bentavegana.
Yes.
Miss Alexander.
Yes.
Miss Martins.
Yes.
Miss Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. McNeil.
Yes.
And Mr. Champy.
Yes. Our second order of business is calendar number 3408, the Bud Shop LLC, located at 1565 Route 22 West, Block 1806, Lot 3.03, operate a Class 5 cannabis retail establishment. You've all had a chance to read the resolution. Are there any board members who would like to comment, make changes or modifications to the resolution? Hearing none, may I have a motion and a second?
Mr. Chairman, I move that this board adopt the resolution as written and as accurately memorializing the previous findings of this board.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bentavegana.
Yes.
Miss Alexander.
Yes.
Miss Scott.
Yes.
Mr. McNeil.
Yes.
And Mr. Champy.
Yes. Our final order, our last order of business is the 2022 Annual Zoning Board Report, which will be discussed by Mr. Rob Pansula, the Board Attorney. Mr. Pansula?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I presented, circulated to the board members, as we're required to do under the municipal land use law, a summary of the actions of this board from the complete year of 2022, just finished. I've done this in the years past, and as you'll see from the resolution, we really had very few, 1 or 2 D1 use variances. So that's a change from years past, and what that tells me as the lawyer, that the town has updated their ordinances in such a fashion where a lot of the applicants and the work that you're seeing done is through permitted uses. We did have quite a few D2 or D3 variances. If you recall, those are for expanding on an existing non-conforming use, and that requires coming to this board, or a conditional use where the bulk conditions aren't satisfied. So there were a number of cases like that, and oftentimes that's due to a business being successfully in place and looking to make an addition or modification or change, which requires them to come to this board. But overall, the summary as I presented it was gleaned from the resolutions as they were presented to this board. We had no matters in litigation last year, which is, I think, the first time I could say that. I don't recall ever having a year that I did not have to go to court at all for any actions of the board. So once again, it's probably a credit and a testament both to the town's approach to development and as well as this board's actions in not in being sustained in reasonably considering all these cases. The town has dramatically updated their ordinances. I know Mr. Manguso and I were consulted on that in some regards during the summer. So the whole ordinance framework in Union has been revamped and updated, in part on summaries that are sent by this board. So, and tonight is an example of that, as I said, as is required. They will react to matters that we've heard. If you recall, in years past, we heard a lot of residential development in the Morris Avenue corridor. They've updated some of the ordinances where you expect business on the first floor with residences to try to be conducive to what the development plan and the master plan is going to expect in this town. This resolution that I've offered to you, as I said, is a factual summary. There's no opinions or anything in it. It's strictly, it's a tabulation. But it is, if it's adopted tonight or when it's adopted tonight, we send it both to the town council and the planning board. The planning board will consider it when it does its master plan considerations, and the council for when they consider ordinances to update. But as I said, they're pretty updated, and I don't expect anything new. And there's really not much to report. The 2 areas that I've noted to help both the town and the planning board that I saw most often, and anyone can ask questions if they need to, but it seems like most of the parking counts are still something that comes up quite often. They need variances for the number of proposed parking spaces, and also for the signage, because the signage details vary from building to building, and it seems, and it's confirmed through the summary, that those are really the areas from a bulk variance situation that come up most often. I don't know if there's a way to try to upgrade or update the ordinances to change that, but I did note that, and if you see in the wherefore, the final whereas clause where it's resolved, those are the areas that I noted for the consideration of the town council and or the planning board. The last sentence on the now therefore be resolved, potential consideration for the change focused on expected off-street parking counts and signage standards. I will also note too, and towards the second half of the year, once the ordinances were updated already and passed by council, a lot of what we had in the past that were variances for parking sizes and locations are now what's called waivers. They're not variances, which is a lesser standard, because once again, based on what we've done in the past, so many cases were coming up with sizes of parking spaces, they're deviating. If it was 9 by 18 with a bollard, now it's in a waiver situation. It's not a variance, it's a lesser standard. You still have to consider it, but that's why I made that adjustment in the last whereas clause as well. So if anybody has any questions or details that they want to hear from me, as I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's a summary, and it's based on your resolutions from the year. All we would need is, I set it up for Mr. Bentavegna to move and Ms. Alexander to second. And if it's in an acceptable format, you can vote, eligible people can vote, and we'll pass it on to the Planning Board and Township Council.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Pansula. Are there any board members that have a question? Like to question Mr. Pansula on the report? Hearing none, we can continue. You've all had a chance to read the resolution. Are there any board members who would like to comment, make changes or modifications to the resolution? Hearing none, may I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I move that this board adopt the resolution as written and is accurately memorializing the previous findings of this board.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bentavegna,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Martins,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. McNeil,
Yes.
and Mr. Champy.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, there be no further business coming before the board this evening. I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.